That's the drum roll. Welcome to the Young Film Academy podcast, the essential podcast for teenagers looking to make their way into the creative industries. I'm Amelia Ciandra, here with Dan Allen on the podcast.
Yup. That's me.
There he is. And today we have such an exciting guest who's going to,
so excited,
really open our minds to something I admittedly know pretty much nothing about. So that's very cool. Josh Faux.
Yeah.
Josh Faux, who is a assistant locations manager.
Yeah.
Assistant locations manager. We got it. We got there.
I feel like an eager puppy. It's like
he just wants to get in there and get on the mic.
I just squeeze some words in. That's okay. We're gonna have lots of time to squeeze words in because that's essentially what a podcast is, isn't it?
Yeah, literally.
Lots of words.
That's pretty much it.
This is pretty much it. Well, we try and paint pictures, and today hopefully we're going to paint some visual pictures of locations and sort of that world, which, as you're saying, you know very little. I'll be honest, I know very little as well because I've always done my own locations, I suppose.
Right.
Apart from on the features, there's always then there's other people doing it. So I've either done it on a small enough scale that I don't have to worry too much, or on a big enough scale that I don't have to worry too much because it's nothing to do with me.
Right. Interesting.
So
yeah.
I'm intrigued and primed is the word I would say to absorb. How are you feeling?
I think both of those words describe me as well. Intrigued and primed. Not that I would have ever chosen those two words, but you hit it. You hit the nail on the head.
Okay. Before I go insane, let's welcome to the podcast our wonderful guest, Josh. How's it going?
It's going great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. We are very excited. You're actually the first person in the world of locations that we've got to speak to, which is, I know.
You're filling a great niche for us.
Absolutely.
We're a rare breed. Well, perhaps it's just difficult to track us down.
Speaking of which, you are literally in your car at the moment. So you're not on location, but you're by the studio where essentially a location is being built. Is that right?
Yeah. Today I'm flying around 3 different locations. Studio, an apartment in Peckham, and a 3-bedroom house in Croydon. So
amazing. So obviously you get to do lots of driving, as we can see. I wondered, we want to sort of explore, what it is that you do for our listeners. So we've got lots of teenagers that will generally, as you know, sort of early on in people's journey, they see themselves as either like a director or an actor or a cinematographer.
Yeah.
And the reality is they don't know loads about all the other roles and certainly what they entail, which is why it's amazing, talking to yourself and some of the other people we've had, finding out really what goes into the different roles and stuff. So I wondered, with your role as an assistant location manager, if you could give us an idea of what your job entails, and then we'll move into the kind of qualities that maybe are best suited for someone in that role, as it were.
Okay. I think I'll start with kind of painting a picture or a better understanding of what the locations department provide for the film industry or TV industry. Essentially, we are a service department. We are there to make sure that from the producers to the electrical department, to the facilities, to the director and the DOP and creating their vision, we essentially service all of that. From the vision to the creative vision, to how it can be operated and achieved on the ground. So there's there's a big goalpost there, basically. I would say that as an assistant location manager role, there's various different roles within our department. But you kind of start right at the beginning of the production. Some of our jobs are we usually stay on the job the longest, because we work with the producer, the director, and director of photography, and depending on what is the situation, you could work with a writer if he's starring in it or it's a personal story, or something like that. So you read the scripts firsthand, and then it's cool. So you get to chat with the director and DOP, especially location managers and supervisors. They get to talk on a very personal level with how the director what they want to achieve, their vision. So setting, they provide mood boards and photographs of all of the spaces that they want, scenes, sets, basically. So it could be a working man's club, it could be a pub, it could be it could be all sorts. It could be in London, could be an estate out in the country. But yeah. Sorry, my suction pad on my phone.
We're just seeing Josh sort of slowly disappear out of frame as the phone sort of keeps trying to tilt down.
Trying to, yeah.
No. Well, the good news is we can hear you nice and clearly, nonetheless, despite your sort of visual struggles.
So let me ask you a question, just while you're kind of in the middle in this description. Is that in the first instance, it sort of sounds to me like this job is part creative and part logistics.
Yes.
Would that be fair to say?
Exactly. It's creative, and you're facilitating the filming. So yeah, definitely.
And what sort of things are you, from a logistics side, what sort of things are you making sure a location has to enable a production to film there? Like, I assume there's quite a lot of things or boxes that need to be ticked to say, yes, we can film there. Or if it seems completely impractical, because I know, occasionally you do get a film or a TV show that is shot somewhere completely impractical. What do you have to do to suddenly make that location practical? Because I assume that sort of thing falls under your guys' remit.
I am so sorry, but that come out completely robotic.
Oh no! I was basically saying what things, what logistics do fall under your remit. What do you look for to make a location suitable for filming, or what do you have to do to make an unsuitable location suitable?
The biggest thing is parking. It's I can't sugarcoat it enough, and it is parking, it's space. A suitable location has plenty of space for parking your big trucks. It has power. You can easily service it with power. You don't need any permissions from different councils to be able to achieve what you want. There's no real ideal and suitable location, because they all have their different kind of tick boxes, really, different parameters, different restrictions. And that said, the vision of the DOP and the director could completely change that. That a completely unserviceable location, just because of the look of it, or the distress of the walls, or kind of the particular decor or architecture, could mean that a totally unserviceable location has to be serviceable. So you have to make it work, whether or not, and that is also the creative side of it, your problem solving, of what, and you're talking to all of these different departments, and you're almost translating it into their requirements, you're translating it into the form of applications for different boroughs in London or for different locations. So depending, like your location owner or a library or the council there or the highways or whatever, so it's quite a lot of information to process. And you're usually working on various different locations at the same time, and they all have different different stages of that. Like the art department have different intentions, the electrical department, grips, all sorts.
You're having to satisfy a lot of needs from a lot of different departments, and is it about then making that location ready for all of them, or do you try to look for locations that already are perfect for each of those departments, if that makes sense?
Well, what kind of overrules all of that is essentially what the director, DOP and producer really want. So you might give 20 locations and you might think, okay, well, they've asked for 3 things and each location has these 3 things, but half of them are really good to service, but then half of them aren't, but half of them are closer to where your studio office or your office is. So there's less travel time. So there's less people doing hours on the job. There's a lot to it. I'm trying to kind of whittle it down to some finer points and not speak so much in riddles.
So it sounds like Josh, you do a lot of kind of cost benefit analysis. That's sort of the creative problem solving that you're talking about, right?
Exactly. Everything is governed by cost and budget. If a place is too far away, or extra sets, can you slot them in with the schedules? And also it's dependent on actor availability. If the actor is not available, then you can't shoot it at that time. So you have to change your entire schedule and also the locations. You might be able to alternate locations or change or change the entire location completely, or scrap a location and build that location in a location you're already at and add a couple of days. It's crazy, but it's fast moving. It's really fast moving.
So with I know you mentioned sort of providing suitable locations and stuff. One role that I've probably heard of earlier than sort of locations managing would be location scouting. Is location scouting its own department? Is that like a separate person that gets hired onto a project, or is that you guys? Does that fall under your guys' remit, or are you working in collaboration with a scout? There's something I'm unsure of.
A lot of you can work solely as a scout. You can scout for commercials, TV and film, or scout for unit bases. That's very rare though, but you can solely just be an independent scout and jump onto jobs. There's different companies out there that give you that, who you just go to them and they find the location. That's it. They send out scouts. You can have a scout that works full time with the film. But most of the time, you can be in a job that you will scout. You'll start right at the beginning of it, and you'll scout as a team, or the supervisor or the location manager on that job will be the scout with another scout. And then once the job starts and the wheels start turning, then the scout is no longer needed. And the supervisor goes into kind of the more.
And is that when you guys would then come on board if it was a project that had a scout? Yeah.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
So then you have to then try and turn everything the Scout did into something that's actually practical and and it's actually going to work for a project.
These are larger jobs where they have scouts, But to be honest, it's the smaller jobs. Even with this, we also double up as scouting. Our supervisor might say, "Have a little look at this," and we'll go over and scout it. We all have a little bit of experience in the scouting itself. So, and it's so easy now with just going to location, filming it, and then taking photographs of it. But it's a different story when you actually have, when you, from experience, you work out how to facilitate it. So when I'm scouting a location, I try to do all of the work. So just all of the parking, working out where I can hold people, or what borough it is, all of that stuff. So
toilets must be a big one as well. I feel. Is it a lot?
Sorry?
Of toilets must be a big one as well. Do you have to take a lot of porta potties to locations?
In the industry, we call it a honey wagon. Don't know why, but it's no idea. I have so many people ask me why is it called a honey wagon, and I still don't know the answer.
Well, did the actors get different ones? Because I know there's sort of there's slightly more care taken for actors to make sure that they have really nice conditions to prepare for their roles and go through the script, so they're not in the elements as much as maybe the rest of the crew. Because obviously, if the DOP looks slightly haggard, it's not going to affect the production. Mm-hmm. Whereas if an actor looks slightly haggard, that is going to have a direct impact on the production. So do they have toilets in like their trailers or stuff like that, or do they just get, or is there just a premium porta potty or a premium honey wagon?
It all depends on the job. The bigger the job, the needier the celebrities or the actors, the more that you tend to them. And it could also fall down a lot on our department, because they might need particular things. Like, there's loads of actors there, like, in Expendables, just like Sylvester Stallone, has his own, like, huge wagon. It's like a small army truck, and it has like a sofa and lounge in his own bathroom and things, and it goes everywhere.
I would expect nothing less from Sylvester Stallone.
That really tracks.
This like macho vehicle with all his needs and supplies. It was like a second home, I suppose.
Exactly. You think how long you're on set for, and it very much depends on who and the caliber of job as well, because it's all in their contracts. It's all in their contracts for the job. So
So I suppose the answer probably differs from project to project, but what's the average number of people that will be on the locations team, on the current project that you're on? How many of you are there that are working?
I'm on a Netflix series at the moment, and it is one supervisor, one manager, one assistant manager, and one assistant and one unit manager. So I would say five. Which is small.
Okay.
And then we kind of employ marshals to help us out during the days. On large jobs, you might also have a second unit. So with the first unit, you could look up to 20 to 30 location department, which it's a lot. And new roles have kind of come into play. You have your supervisor, your location manager, but you could have a junior location manager now, or a junior unit manager, where they're not, or also a junior assistant location manager, roles that, because the trouble is with the role, it's paperwork heavy, but also you struggle sometimes to run the floor. And deal with the problems on the ground.
So you can either be an assistant location manager and just make sure you drive around and you never really go on set, you just do all the paperwork. Or you could be a location manager that does, is always on the floor and everything, or best of both worlds. But it's a very intense job. So that's why you have, on the large jobs, you have either assistants who can, or simple assistant location managers who just run the floor. They deal with all the issues on the floor because, imagine 150 crew coming into a location, and, they all have different needs and requirements. They all need tents, heaters, whatever it could be. And then you've got to deal with, that something in the location doesn't work, or the lights aren't turning on. It's a football pitch and the lights aren't heating up and turning on.
So do you get a lot of angry voices channeling through the location department, or are people generally fairly sort of respectful?
That depends on the job. And that depends on who you're working with as well.
Yeah, of course.
Definitely.
Sorry, you go.
Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
No. You.
I have a sort of left turn question.
Sure.
Which is, you were talking about, so you're looking for these locations, you're scouting, you might be scouting them or somebody else has scouted them, and they have all of these, tick boxes. They've got all these parameters that you're looking for to fulfill. How is the decision made between finding a location that exists or building a location in a studio? And are you part of that decision-making process?
This is a really interesting question because this just recently happened on my current job. A lot of it is down to funding. A studio build generally costs a lot more than going out on location. Which it sounds surprising. But you think you've got the space that you need to build it in, you've got all the labor, you've got the material cost. And I think, but the real pivotal point of that is kind of that to build it, you have 100% control. There's no, oh, do you need that moved? Do you need that painted? Do you, even with lighting, with just physical movement and, each and every department have 100% kind of total flexibility for creative flow. And with locations, they have this restriction, but that doesn't mean to say that with a location, yes, you have those restrictions, and there might be certain things that you can't do. But for the actor and the DOP and the director, you are there in the moment, creating this scene and it just makes it so much more realistic. I think, but you would see a lot of DOPs. They would prefer a studio build, definitely. And so much could be done in the studio, depending on where you've got these incredible VR walls. You can facilitate them. You've got endless power, and sometimes it's just easier. Than moving around all the time, because if you move around a lot, it can take its toll. But sometimes with jobs, you have your studio as your base, and then you go out to maybe 3 or 4 different locations, then which are special or particular in the scene or episode, and then you come back to the studio and do the rest. So
is sort of time that you need that location for, does that become the most important factor in whether you're going to build it? Do you and is there sort of a general cutoff? Like, if you're going to film for 5 days, then it always is cheaper to do a set build, or does it work out differently?
No, that's exactly right. If you had a bar which is in every single episode, you're going to think, well, let's build it. Because so much goes on around there. Even if it's a small town, like if it's a Wild West movie, you think, okay, well, we're gonna build the town.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer, really. But that doesn't mean to say that a location can become your studio base. It's just the length of time you are at one set. Like you, from your experience, Dan, you find one location and you, as a set, and you utilize it as multiple sets. So
the last feature went with I think we were, and not just as a set, but also as like a base camp. It was both accommodation and film location. We had a series of youth hostels. And the youth hostel was also a bedroom. It was also a bar. It was also a ranger's cabin, including a bedroom in the ranger's cabin. It was everything, basically. Oh, and did I say nightclub?
No.
So it was everything, and also it was where everyone was sleeping. So that is a very cost efficient way of doing it, if you can. I assume accommodation, on the scale of productions that you've worked on, with the movies and stuff, that they're not sleeping in sleeping bags in the floor.
That'd be quite cool if you were to
a proper movie sleepover.
But it's something that I have looked in the past for, that because you're so far away from the production office. Normally, a rule of thumb is, over 30 miles, you have to pay travel.
Yeah.
So you get an extra little bit of wage for that, or you get put up. So we have to look for, it's usually the production's responsibility, but it has fallen upon the locations department to find suitable accommodation. And we also, for location owners, find and tenants and things like that, because we're filming in their house for a long period of time. We usually relocate them in a hotel.
Oh,
yeah,
that sounds quite nice.
So, in terms of what you do, you're talking about the paperwork. So you do also, you've got you've got this creative element, which sounds, very cool. But it also sounds, as you said, there's a lot of paperwork. Are you dealing as well with the legalities of utilizing a location? Is that part of what falls under your remit? Is, can we legally shoot here? Whose permissions do we need? That kind of stuff?
Exactly. Most of the legal with contracts are given from the location company, the companies that are funding your production, and they have their own lawyers. So we have location agreements and sorts, and obviously binding NDAs and contracts. But when it comes to permissions, applications, and all sorts, we do a lot of it. We do most of it. We do all of it. Actually. All of it. We take what we'll go on director's recce's, and then they love it. We'll go on a tech recce where every head of department talks. So they ask, can this be done? Can this be done? And sometimes you just got to say no, because it can't be done.
What sort of things are they sort of requesting that sort of is unachievable, I wonder?
That's probably the bad way to say it. Nothing is unachievable at all. Nothing. You could always, you're making movies, man. Like,
Yeah.
just everything is achievable. Even if you can compromise in certain ways, it's still achievable. You ever, if you wanted to, if you wanted to run down the street naked towards Piccadilly Circus and then scream at the top of your lungs at all the images because your ex-girlfriend put a picture of you, stroking a cat on there, it's doable. Someone.
And
I want to see that film.
movie.
But like, it's,
I do know the kinds of things that maybe you have to limit expectations of. So you're at a location, you've got a head of department that says, "Oh, can we do this?" What sort of thing do you have to then start thinking? Okay, well, not immediately we can do that, but we can sort of maybe achieve it another way.
There are, I would say, strategies to kind of subtly show and share with the DOP and the production what is achievable, and to work within those refinements. So essentially, you almost, where a scene of someone walking across the road with a phone, because we can't get a road closure safely, it's not now walking on the road; it's walking on the pavement.
Right.
Gotcha.
This is that's a very common thing to change, but it's these things that because we essentially bridge the gap between this film creative world and the real world. Like you've got to understand that, and a lot of people struggle to. You've got to understand that that there is a real world here. And, pubs and clubs open at certain times. Neighbours are dodgy, or, there's, or whatever it might be. It's near a school, or, it's school time. School kids use the swimming pool, whatever it is. It's quite, there's always restrictions.
You just reminded me about noise as well. Obviously, if kids are using a pool like next door, there's something you have to obviously, I assume, be mindful of. You go to a location, it's like, where is the external noise coming from? Is it going to cause problems, I suppose?
Exactly. Sound department are always pretty good. A lot of, they don't really want to go to the studio and dub everything because that's very, very expensive.
Yeah.
So, as you know, Dan, you know yourself. So
yes,
it takes up time as well.
Absolutely. And there's something more magical about getting the sound directly on set as well. I think it's a real art to try and recreate a performance in a vocal booth, and it's really, really tricky because ultimately you're not focusing on how your voice sounds when you're on set. Normally you're focusing on giving a truthful emotional performance. So then suddenly you've got to go into a room and do the same thing, but it needs to match up. So there's an element of slightly more results orientated performance. I think that often comes out in ADR, especially if you don't have loads of experience with ADR. I mean, Amelia, do you have experience doing ADR in a film?
I've done a little bit of ADR. Yeah. It's not fun.
No,
it's very difficult, and it is. You're right. It's a bit more like paint by numbers in terms of your performance than actually kind of telling the truth or being real in the moment. You're just you're looking at your mouth and you're looking. It's very odd. So that definitely affects it.
100%.
I've got a question.
Go for it.
You want to ask your question, Dan, or shall I?
I was gonna ask about the sort of the kind of character of a person within locations department. Would your question be a good follow-on from that, do you think, Amelia?
No, it's totally unrelated, so your question's better. Go ahead.
Okay, we'll come to the unrelated in a moment. So obviously someone that likes driving, I assume, is a plus. But also, like, what kinds of interests and what kind of personality or what kind of like skills are necessary to work really well within locations?
Diplomacy. I would feel a big one. And to be able to a level of controlling your character and your tone, and how you compose yourself, because you're discussing, you're convincing someone from the real world that about making a movie in their personal home, and you've got to be reliable as well. You've got to be reliable, organized, and respectful and diplomatic. Definitely. And it involves a character who I would say, is not too keen on office work. Someone who can work wherever and can, is quite flexible in that sense. Because, yeah, I would say that those are the key kind of attributes of her, and you gotta work hard.
Yeah.
You can't worry about getting messy, getting mucky. And problem solving is also a really big one. Also involved, but it's like locations is kind of a bit of everything. That's the beauty of it. It's I learn a little bit of what the DOP does and what the electrical department do, and you're like a jack of all trades and not really a master of any. So I personally, I'd done a BA in graphic design, and it wasn't really, I worked in studios abroad and I worked in a studio in London, and it just wasn't for me. It was creative, sure, but it was restrictive. I felt it was restrictive for the person I work better in different environments and things always changing. So if I would say the best person for locations is if they are spontaneous. Not too spontaneous.
Are you spending a lot of time away from home then? Obviously you're traveling around loads. Like, how often do you return to your base camp or to your home?
It's a hit and miss, actually. I could do a morning of paperwork at home. It can be the most flexible job if you have a home-orientated life, but it also can be the most unflexible. It's how you make it. And it depends very much on the job role and the caliber of the production that you're on. Because I've known close friends in the industry who've just had children, and he's managed to find the time. But then I know friends who have dedicated their entire selves to location work because it's such a demanding, the film industry is so demanding. And with the locations, it's extended. You're the first in, last out. It's expected of you to do really kind of the, crazy. I'm actually really young. I just look really old.
Can you talk a little bit about, you just mentioned that you did a BA in graphic design. Can you talk a little bit about your trajectory from that kind of into where you are now? What did you do on your journey to becoming an assistant location manager?
Sorry, you've got to repeat that one again. As a robot.
Location connection.
That I was asking.
Yeah, I'm trying my best to.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, a bit better.
Okay, so you talked about a little bit about it just now. You said you had done a BA in graphic design, and I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about your trajectory in the industry. So, you started doing that, and then how did you kind of get there to become an assistant location manager?
Okay. I worked. I used to photograph from 18. I used to photograph nightclubs. And I photographed a club in Mayfair, London, for a long time called Cirque du Soir, in a really different way, quite different to usual club photography. That evolved from after I finished my BA. I worked in the studio, like I said, in Amsterdam and stuff. But after that, I applied for jobs. When I got back to London, I applied for jobs that were involved within the fashion industry because I was still really into photography. I worked for a photographer called David Sims, but as a studio assistant. I really wanted to get onto a photo assistant role, and unfortunately, after a year, I didn't progress in that, and they let me go. They said I wasn't really suited for the fashion industry. And then I got asked, someone put me forward to take photographs of a location. I was curious, like, where does this go? And weirdly, because as the studio assistant, I was pretty geared up to, being responding or very responsive to all sorts of different problems, what happened with the studio, and how to repair things, how to look after things, how to accommodate your clients within this really high-end studio like Givenchy, Burberry, and, Gucci, etc., like Palace and stuff. So, and that really kind of geared me up. And also the early mornings, because I used to open up the studio at like 4 a.m.
Wow.
But, and then he asked me whether or not I wanted to assist him, a location assistant. I actually never done marshalling. That is the beginning role of a location department. I never really done that. I jumped straight on a Channel 4 job for a couple of months as a location assistant, and I learned everything. I was first in, last out every single day. I looked after all of the equipment. I learned how to use radio. I learned everything on this job. But it wasn't that I was being taught. I was teaching myself. I was getting, I was familiarizing myself with all the equipment, with the departments. I was asking questions all the time. Because unfortunately, the job role is so fast paced that unless you're on really big jobs, you don't have the time for people to teach you. You try to make the time, but it's difficult. It really is difficult. Because you're all so busy. You've got so many things going on. And then I went from location assistant to, I've done a couple of jobs doing location on a featured film, which again taught me more because you meet like-minded people. And everyone chats. Everyone chats on the set. Everyone, everyone chats to the back of their truck. Everyone chats de-rigging. And, you get to really know people and what they do and what their skill sets are. And then after that, as a I worked within the unit team as an assistant unit manager, and I started to get more into the paperwork. And then this is my third role as an assistant location manager. Clearly, some people thought I was competent, to move up. But that's been in the space really only in this film industry for 2 years. So, but you have a lot of people now who are moving very quickly within the industry. Locations department is an industry that you can move quite quickly in. This is because it involves a lot of outdoor world skills, not really kind of technical skills. So that's why you see a lot, a lot of younger people are stepping into these roles with less experience, but under the wings of really experienced people, which is very fortunate for them. not everyone has slogged it. You know, and it is hard because now I'm in a position. I'm not slogging it. I'm delegating work and sorts and thinking and problem solving more, which is more of a managing role. And I think I've still got so much to learn because I'm learning at the moment how to read scripts properly. That's a big one. Because you all have different codes and they mean different, like 2/8 of a page and sorts. So, and that's crucial because that's timing, and time is crucial for me for scenes, for scenes that you're allowed to film on roads, outside shops, stuff like that.
Very cool.
But that's where I get to.
Last final couple of questions for you, because I know you're on location and you got to jump off. I wondered if you could tell us what you were doing in your teenage years that set yourself up for the career, or things that maybe you were doing that inadvertently have been helpful. Which feels like a funny question to ask you because we were actually hanging out together as teenagers. For those that don't know,
you know what I was like. I was very entrepreneurial. I was spontaneous, very impulsive, and I've done all sorts. I didn't really slow. It wasn't like when we were growing up. It's like when you, Dan, I remember when you got your first camera for your birthday. We were there, we were opening it up and stuff, and we were filming over the night. We just didn't. I don't think we stopped filming until like 3 a.m. or something. But after that, that was very much that's what Daniel does. That he's a filmmaker, he's a director, and then only in your later life you very much refined your skill set into more writing as well. But I was never really like, when you looked at what I was doing, it was never like that. It was always, I was always doing weird, interesting things and had these stories to tell, and entrepreneurial kind of endeavors and stuff like that. But I was never pinned to just one thing. And as weird as it might say, that's not a bad thing. That's just how my mind, how I am as a person. So I would say if you don't really know what you really, really want to do, come into locations.
Yeah. Is that something? Should they just reach out to companies that if they want to get into locations, just find location companies in film?
Yes, you've got like Salt, Location Collective, but the best thing, location department is probably the easiest step into. But the best thing about working within this industry is that you can do anything. You really can. It's like, like if you want to learn more about the camera, you can go over to the camera department and chat with them. And so many marshals that we employ for the days are like, they want to be in production, they want to look after cast members, they want to coordinate, do production stuff, they want to be a camera assistant, grip assistant, all sorts. And the locations department, it seems like it's always the kind of the step into it, the stepping stone, as you will, to other job roles. But then that doesn't mean, I also step into different, I do electrical work. So that's also something that mixes well with the film work. And you can never stop investing in yourself. Those are the biggest investments that you can make in life. I feel not investing in assets, but the biggest asset is you and your skills. So, and working in film, it's a multiverse of skills to be able to access.
I was just going to say, before Dan asks you the final question we always ask, it's really interesting to hear you talk about yourself as entrepreneurial, because I think the skill of diplomacy comes from being entrepreneurial. So you were already kind of laying the foundation of the skill sets that you needed in this career you've ended up in, but you didn't even know it. You were kind of developing, as you say, the asset of yourself by learning these skills of just talking to people, which seems like it's quite a key part of your role is good communication.
I'm not exactly. It's clear communication, and depending who you're communicating with, I'm quite diplomatic. Very patient and forgiving, but I'm rubbish in negotiating. Like rubbish. It's like, oh yeah, so you want to film in this pub? I was like, yeah, I'd love to film in this pub. We'll give you like £100 million. Not quite, but it's hard because it's a two-way street. You want to kind of film there. So I'm getting better though.
So Josh, last question. Sure. What advice would you give to your teenage self? Stick
to something. It's quite contradictory, but I would say stick to a skill and make it your own and learn the hell out of it. That's what I would wanted more. That's what my advice is my young self.
Oh, Josh, but I know how much of a talented photographer you are, so I'm like, oh no, but you are so good. And you have got amazing skills, like especially in that department, As we learned from your Cirque du Soir stories. But no, dude, that's really useful.
Yeah, stay fit.
Stay fit. There you go. That's a lovely one. Stay fit and active, especially in locations. Do you do a lot of walking around? Obviously, a lot of driving, but a lot of on your feet as well, I imagine.
Yes, a lot of.
Amazing.
But more managerial roles, you tend to, half your time is spent behind a computer. Oh yeah.
I see. Josh, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for talking to us. This has been tremendously enlightening. I know I speak for both myself and Amelia.
Absolutely.
I hope it has been enlightening. Thank you very much for having me. I've never really done anything like this before. So thank you.
You have been a natural and a treat. So thank you. It's been a blast. Thanks for joining us, Josh.
Okay, guys, take care.
I think if you love driving and you love going to lots of places, then you can't get more perfect than working in locations in film, really. I can't think of anything that sort of takes you to so many places so quickly as well. You might, even if you're sort of a wildlife photographer, I mean, that's a completely different ballgame. But getting to go and be creative and be constantly thinking about storytelling within spaces, I just think it sounds like such an amazing profession.
Yeah, it's very, I was really struck by, because I think that's one of the interesting things. It's something I've always said about myself in the past, and I think it's something that some people have, which I think is great, is to be able to be creative at the same time as being able to have those administrative kind of logistics skills. And it's sometimes hard to find something that combines both of those. And so it sounds like such a great role. There are plenty of roles in film that aren't creative, that really are, they just do the paperwork, or they, I'm just thinking of all of the essential things to making a film that don't actually involve the creativity of the film itself. Craft services, for example, very important job, but not necessarily adding to the storytelling of a film. But this role, as you say, you're getting to stretch those creative muscles, have those probably incredibly in-depth, cool conversations with the director and the DOP and the producer. And then you're also kind of doing this other element of it, which is making all of that happen, facilitating and servicing, as Josh said, which I think is just very cool. What an interesting role that I will admit I knew very little about before speaking to him, and I thought it was just fascinating to learn.
Yeah. No, 100%, 100%. And also, it's a sort of role that if you are coming at it from I'm a director perspective or I'm a producer, and then you think, oh, actually, locations is a fun way of doing it. It's a nice way of getting into film that means you're not in an office from the get-go, you know? But also, I think if you are working one of those roles as a teenager, in terms of directing or producing, you probably are already dealing in locations, and think it's just opening up that idea that is its own role that you can then go into and pursue. You know, like as a director, you're probably looking for locations. As a producer, you're definitely looking for locations, sorting out paperwork of like just permission of like, we can film here and we can use imagery that we capture here. Like, there's certain contracts for filming in locations that you can get off the internet. You can pretty much find them online and use those, and we'd recommend doing that. If you Google location scout contract or location contract film, I'm sure there'll be some templates that you can find, and it's sort of going into that world. But then it's also that discovery process, and if you enjoy arriving to set before everything's even constructed, and then also seeing it packed down as well. You're seeing the entire arc of a production taking place at any given location, which I think is really cool.
What a way to learn about the life cycle of production. You know, it really is. And you're right. I think on small productions, if you're making your own, you know, if you're doing your own filmmaking by yourself at this moment in your life, which is fantastic, you are being a locations manager. You just aren't necessarily conscious of it. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of when you do widen the scope, when you do get to move up into, you know, making bigger budget films or working on, you know, professional film sets, you're seeing how people can, you know, step back and specialize, which is such an important thing. And as you say, opens up your mind to just other avenues of being a part of the filmmaking process rather than just being the director. You know, if you discover, you know, actually, I'm really quite passionate about finding locations. I think that's very cool. Yeah.
No, 100%, 100%. And as always, we're hearing that same skill set that I think is just becoming imperative to working in film in general, which is diplomacy. It's being good at working with people. Like these are roles that require you to interact with large numbers of people. So I think working on those skills and being good at those skills is sort of key to succeeding, obviously in this role, but also in all roles really in general, which is something to emphasize and stress. I think we should also mention that Josh offered to help our students as well, which is amazing. So if anyone is interested in maybe location marshalling and stuff, then do get in contact with us. You can email podcast@youngfilmacademy.co.uk and we can help try and make that happen, potentially, subject to age, driving license, other stuff like that.
Yeah. But. Well, and also, you know, what I was thinking about is this idea of these skills, you know, and I was conscious of Josh's response to our final questions about, you know, what would you tell your teenage self and what were you doing when you were a teenager? But, you know, so many of the things that he described, those are transferable skills. So even if at this moment you aren't going to film school because you're doing your A-levels and your parents don't want you to go to film school, things that you're learning elsewhere are going to be transferable into coming and working in this industry. Anything that you learn about working with people is going to help you. And so that's a really good way, I think, to you know, it might be a balm to not being able to do perhaps exactly what you want at this moment, is that you are really learning things to take with you into that next endeavor.
100%. I feel like we're more inspired and impressed by his teenage years than he
Definitely.
was. Because, you know, gaining all these different skills and genuinely his photography is great as well, which helps working in locations too. But yeah, gathering that knowledge and being versatile is, I think, actually what makes you powerful. Do you know what I mean? I can't remember. I read something online. Someone was talking about how being the best at any one thing is obviously really good, but the chances of you being in the top 1% of anything is very tough and very challenging. But if you're in the top 5% or top 10% of 4 or 5 different things, then no one is going to have your collective skill set. So actually, I think that versatility, you know, that jack of all trades, master of none terminology has always been used negatively to suggest that someone's actually not great at any one thing. But I think the reality is being really, 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 really good at many things is what makes you unique and you special. And I think is also a more truthful way of living your life, because we want people, and this is the same as if you're a director, having specialist interests and specialist knowledge that all feeds into creating you as a human is what's going to set you apart.
Well, and
is a far more powerful endeavor, I think.
And if I can just blow your mind here for a second, Dan, the actual full quote is a jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. So that's actually the full quote, and we have sort of culturally shunted it to make it seem like a bad thing. But actually, the full quote is saying, no, it's a good thing to be a jack of all trades. That's oftentimes better than just being, you know, which is just what you said. And I think it's true, especially in the industry. Any experience that you have in any of these departments is going to make you a stronger, better member of the ensemble that it takes to make a film happen.
Yeah, I'm slightly flabbergasted. I feel like, is it the same connotations in America as well? Because my initial instinct was that's such a British misinterpretation, just to be like, it's almost like self-defensive. Be like, yeah, no, I'm a jack of all trades and master of none. Feels like a very British thing to be like, you know what I mean? To be defeatist,
self-deprecating,
as it were. But yeah, absolutely. Is it the same negative connotations and used in that way?
Same way in the US
as well?
Same. We've all of our English-speaking friends, it seems, have unintentionally, misinterpreted and cut off the second half of that adage.
Wow.
So yeah,
that is amazing. Okay, I've got a question to wrap things up, Amelia. But my mind is still blown. I'm shaking.
Shook to the core.
I'm not actually. It's shook to the core. So this question's from Bessie, who is 15, and she wants to know what to look for when choosing her filming locations. So thank you very much, Bessie, for your question. Do you have any thoughts on this, Amelia?
I'm just thinking of the things that Josh said to us, and how you really have to do for pretty much for any location a cost-benefit analysis. And that means literal costs, like actual financial costs, but there are also other costs to take into consideration when you're doing that cost-benefit analysis. Time, ease of location, the simple things of like parking and toilets, honey wagon that we discussed. I think all of those things are really key to sort of always keep in mind. So I think probably the best thing to look for in a location is actually not a thing. It's something that you need to have when you're looking for a location, which is that ability to see it from multiple perspectives and not just look at it maybe aesthetically and go, oh, it's beautiful, this is where we want to shoot. Because it might be beautiful, but how are you going to get power there? Or how are you going to get heating there? So it's all those kind of things that need to come into consideration.
100%. I think that's a great answer. And then the only thing I'd mention is, what I mentioned earlier in the podcast is things like noise. I think so often gets overlooked in choosing locations, especially if you're new to making films or you've only made a few, and maybe you filmed them in good locations. Even environments where, just listen, is there a buzz? Can you hear the hum of traffic in the background? Like if you're making an apocalyptic movie and you're like, oh, I found this nice forest, but then you can hear the sound of traffic in the background, that's going to kill your vibe. And any sort of strange noises. So do take a moment to be quiet in your prospective location and think, okay, is this okay for sound? And the other thing I'd say is avoid spaces with white walls. White walls are the death of cinematic images, unless you're filming something at night, in which case you can use lamps and stuff and you get nice gradients, like nice light fall off on the walls. But generally, filming against white walls just creates really boring imagery. So try to choose something with interesting walls and nice colors and a color palette that suits the tone of the scene, or at least the tone of your movie.
Also, I would say a white wall could work if you're putting somebody in like a padded room because they're crazy. That's the only other time a white wall might work.
There you go. There you go. And then maximize that negative space, baby. Just shoot lots of wides, get them framed against it. But yeah, absolutely. If you can use lighting to at least create some contrast on the walls, then that'll help somewhat as well. Amazing. Okay. Thanks for joining us, guys. This has been a treat as always.
Absolutely fantastic.
We'll see you soon.
Before we finish up, should I just mention that just another bomb to drop on us is that there is actually a locations manager who won a BAFTA. And that was the first time that ever happened. A female location manager named Emma Pill won a BAFTA for her contribution to film. So I think it also just goes to show it doesn't matter what you're doing, you still might win an award if that's what you're after.
Absolutely. Go hunt that glory. You deserve it. See you next time.